and we're back finally after a busy 2 weeks of end of school and parties and everything else. But that's not why we're here and what we're here to talk about in this video. We've had a lot of questions about vegetables that grow well in the shade. For those of you who are in smaller spaces, only have patios and terraces. So in this video, we're going to talk about 10 crops for your shady spots. If you all are new here, welcome. And if you are returning, I'm so glad to see you again. Let's get growing, y'all. So the very first thing we need to talk about is tracking the sun on either your garden, your yard, your terrace, or your patio. You really need to know each area of those locations on each corner how much sun it gets per day, because that will determine in what you can grow in those locations. So let's talk about that first, shall we? If it's full sun, that means it gets 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. Partial sun means that it gets 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight per day. Partial shade means that it gets 3 to 4 hours of direct or indirect sunlight a day. And then deep shade, of course, is exactly what it says. It gets no sunlight a day during the day. It does not get any sunlight during the day. So you really want to pay attention, because if a place is getting less than 3 hours of sun a day, you probably want to find a different location for the plants. So as we talk about these plants, all of these plants I have currently planted in my gardens around, and you would have seen that at the beginning in the intro of me showing the different areas where I have them planted. But we're really going to talk about what they are and what type of sunlight they need in order to grow, regardless if they are in a garden or they are growing in a pot. So before we continue on with this video, I want to apologize for the background noise. I guess one of my neighbors decided to go grinding on the cement out front, so it's gonna be there, guys. Okay, so with that said, let's talk about these 10 crops for your shady spots. First thing we're gonna talk about are potatoes. If you all have seen my garden tours here recently, if you haven't, I will link it at the end of this video so that you can go see it. But I have potatoes planted in various places around my yard, and I've planted them for years this way. But you can grow potatoes in shade. Next plant we're going to talk about is celery. Celery can be grown in partial shade. Personally, I tried growing celery this spring and it did just fine. I grew it with my squash, and my squash leaves gave it this partial sun that it needed. But I would tell you that if you are in a warmer climate, try and grow it in the fall. You'll probably have more success with it. Cherry tomatoes, my absolute favorite. If you don't believe me that they can grow in partial shade, those are all Sweet 100 cherries. I also have them growing in my front gardens. If you've seen my garden tour, I pointed those out as we were walking through. Check it out at the end of the video and you'll get to see the larger cherries, which are the large house cherries. Of course, lettuce. Lettuce grows well in dappled shade, partial shade. I've had great success with it in all of those locations. Roma tomatoes. People don't think about paste tomatoes when they're growing things. They think all tomatoes need full shade. But Roma tomatoes and cherry tomatoes are shade tolerant, and they can grow in partial shade. So if you have a location that just kind of gets a little bit of sun, but it gets at least 3 hours, you can grow a cherry or a Roma tomato in that. And actually, I've grown the big paste mortgage tomatoes last year. They got about 9 foot tall and they were grown in full shade. It's just something to think about when you're thinking about growing things. Cauliflower requires shade. For those of us who are in North Texas, I get a lot of comments about cauliflower, cabbage, and artichoke, how it doesn't grow here. It doesn't grow because you put it in full sun. It requires shade. So if you are in a hotter climate, grow it in the shade, or wait till fall and grow it in that particular climate. Carrots tolerate light shade. That's why you see when I plant my tomatoes, I plant carrots down the sides and I plant them underneath the tomatoes because they can grow with the tomatoes. If you've ever read the book, Carrots Love Tomatoes, it's either carrots love tomatoes or tomatoes love carrots. but it's a really good book, and it talks about how those two things can grow well together, because the tomatoes take up the sun and the carrots are shaded and they grow just fine together. The other thing is spinach. Spinach tolerates shade. It tolerates partial shade. It tolerates partial sun. So if you have one of these towers, or you have a Dollar Tree tower and you want to put your sunny stuff on the front of it, on the back of it you easily could put lettuce and spinach and beets and carrots, and onions will grow just fine in them. So, and then the final thing that we're going to talk about is beets. I have grown beets in the sun, and I have had less success with growing them in the sun than growing them in partial shade. Last year I grew them in partial shade. Half of it was in partial shade, the other half was in shade, and it did phenomenal. It was the best beet crop that I've ever had. And then the final one is radishes. Radishes here in North Texas are best grown in early spring to late fall, because they only take about 21 days to grow, but they can certainly tolerate the shade if you have a shadier spot. Like you want to do a garden bag, a 20-gallon garden bag, and you want to make a salad bag out of that. Put your radishes behind the lettuce and let them be shaded. They will do phenomenal for you. So that's my 10 crops for shady spots. You know, you can grow great many things in shade, or I'm sorry, partial shade and partial sun, but let me know down in the comments what you're growing in those areas on your own, and how much success have you had with them. That's great information. We all learn from each other, and that's the way we become better gardeners as we go through this journey together. If you all are new here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button, because new videos are posted often, and I would hate for you to miss anything. Until I see you in the next video, you all keep growing and you keep your heads up. Take care. Bye-bye.